The following is for educational entertainment purposes only and not to be taken as actual advice or academia knowledge-based material resource. Hence, always do your research of credible information. Under the fair use copyright laws, this video contains pieces of copyrighted works which I do not own and were not specifically authorized to be used by the copyright holders, but which we believe in good faith are protected by the federal law and fair use doctrine for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, parody, or research, and is not an infringement of copyright. We believe this constitutes a fair use of any such copyrighted material as provided for in Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Law. The following also contains unintentional suggestive content, opinionated subjects, and censored coarse profanity language that may not be suitable for different age groups. Viewer discretion is advised.
Ding, ding, ding! It's go time!
Hello everyone, welcome back. Hope you're all ready for part 2 of this video. Hope you enjoyed the first video as well. As I said before, I'm aware that misinformation is a common trend in today's society, and I don't expect anyone to take all the rhetorics, allegory, and educational stuff I throw in too seriously. I'm just interpreting what I've learned so far in my life as an amateur philosopher and poet. I don't expect I'll be hitting the mark on my theoretical process here. I am open to constructive criticisms and corrections on what I preach to you all today, so I can address those corrections in another video.
Oh, Jesus, does everybody have a fucking speech shoved up their ass?
For those who love my attempt at being a philosophical YouTuber here, I greatly appreciate it and hope you enjoy part 2. With that said, let us proceed. Moving down the list from the previous acronyms in the previous video, we now go to time.
Sweet mother of God!
Since the first video mostly consisted of Western civilization comparisons to the acronyms of the common word, this one I'm gonna attempt to enlighten you on the concept of time through Eastern civilization. According to Webster's dictionary, time is defined as a measured or measurable period during which an action, process, or condition exists or continues in duration. A non-spatial continuum that is measured in terms of events which succeed one another from the past through the present and on to the future. The first definition of time I find to be more adhered to the true definition of time as described by the East. When you follow or practice in the ways of Taoism, Zen, Buddhism, and or Hinduism, their definitions of time are far more different than the way we view them in the West. Hell, even St. Augustine of Hippo was more close to the mark on the true meaning of time, and he was a bishop for God's sake.
What a twist!
Bloody frickin' God!
To quote him, I know what time is, but when you ask me, I do not know. Time is not represented by dials, digital framework, a calendar, a resume, none of that. Time has always been the present moment, here and now. Not what happened 10 years ago. Not what we think will happen 5 years from now either. In the East, time had many interpretations and cyclic perspectives that are considered to be problematic or controversial in today's world. Especially in today's world, thank you Friedrich Nietzsche. In Hinduism, for example, time was represented as a wheel involving reliving life and death and reincarnation over and over again. The view of reincarnation is represented by the yugas. Yuga in Sanskrit means age of humankind. As you can see, we seem to have borrowed a good deal of our representation of time in the West as viewed by this wheel. I hope you catch on to what I mean here in a moment.
Well, allow me to retort.
The Yuga gives us 4 Kala cycles, all culminating into 4,320,000 years of time in human history. Kala, spelled K-A-L-A in Sanskrit, means time. Obviously, this representation of time is debunked because scientists and scholars have already indicated that the Earth is at least 4.6 billion years old, and that human existence in recorded history is said to be at least 10,000 years old, with the successful iteration of the Homo sapiens outliving the previous iterations like the Neanderthals.
I feel like we've been here before. Have we been here before?
I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
But I digress. Going back on topic, based upon what we discussed about the Hindus' view on reincarnation and time, I like to think of it as a comparison to the idea behind deja vu.
Do you ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster?
I don't think so, but I could check with the kitchen.
While there may have been some scholastic theories on the idea that deja vu is almost an experience of reincarnation, thinking that I've done this before in a past life, do not take what I say into actuality. This is just a personal theory. Let the real scholars do their research onto this matter.
Ding, ding, ding! What do we have for her, Johnny?
From the theological concepts of time from Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, particularly the Tibetan Tantric Buddhist. And then of course Marcus Aurelius being the starting point in the West that would eventually catch the attention of the Western philosophers. All representations have one common factor. They all believe that time's supposed to be a state of spinning around and around with or without starting point or ending point to make us consider where our place is in history. Now, the concept of time has taken an immensely negative turn in the modern world. Ever since we were able to utilize the sundial, we went from that to making clock towers like Parliament and the church. The more we focused on making time more convenient for us, the more we fought to have time on our side each day. As a result, this produced anxiety because we in turn created a concept we identify as causality. Anything that was part of the past may play out into the present and on to the future. Our work experience 10 years ago will ultimately determine our next job if we lose another one. Also, we look at our clocks and our calendars. When we make plans and time flies, we forget that we're supposed to be ready for something. As such, the anxiety in us puts us into a frenzy of whether we can make it in time or else this will happen, possibly. This interminable cycle leaves us in wretch when time is not on our side.
Save the clock tower! Save the clock tower!
Before I get onto a tangent rant here, let me try to get us back in track. We've viewed time as a wheel, and of course, a river. Throughout our recorded history, we've represented time by a hairline, a thread, telling us pinpoints in history that have defined humanity's greatest accomplishments, blunders, innovations, war, terror, disease, etc. So far, we have retrieved various documents, which of course retrieving ancient archives are few and far between. We then idolize these pinpoints in history to better understand the ways of progress. Now time, in and of itself, can be viewed as cyclic. I prefer cosmic. And while there is scholastic research indicating the cosmic view of time, I like to throw in a personal theory, or should I say an opinion, in the form of question. What if time did not exist in the conventional sense? What if we got rid of all the clocks that we see in this world? Our clocks, represented in smartphones, smartwatches, computers, digital alarm clocks, any clock that we have in our disposal today. What if all of those were destroyed, never again to see the light of day? How would you feel?
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Everybody sit down! What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Honestly, I'd be more at peace. There have been points in my life where I forget nearly every holiday in the calendar. I just simply don't care. In the cosmic view of time, time exists in the eternal now, the moment we close our eyes and focus on our breath.
How long will that take?
Time has no meaning. To a true student, a year is as a day.
A year?
The cosmic view of the flow of time is a one-way street that doesn't evolve nor attempt to conceptualize the view of time. We just observe the stars, planets, moon, and sun, the grassland valleys, the ocean waves. Watch the push and pull of the ocean. Watch the wind swerving dance in the field of lilies. This is how time used to be, and it was peaceful. But now, human progress dictates that time is a form of entropy, determinism, a fixed point, the dials of a clock moving around second by second as a means of time. And that is what we have to live with, unfortunately.
The intent here is to gain a clear perception of humanity. Where we've been, where we're going, the pitfalls and the possibilities, the perils and the promise. Perhaps even an answer to that universal question. Why?
So, if time has a place in the representation of history, what else is there to be said about it? Well, we are still a few more words of the acronym away, so let's keep going, shall we? Well, for those who are still awake, and I thank you if you are, let's move on to the letter O. The letter O in this case standing for oration or orator.
So much as one syllable.
I know. At first this makes no sense. But really think about it for a sec. We define oration, according to the Webster's Dictionary, as an elaborate discourse delivered in a formal and dignified manner. Or, in short, you may think of as a public speaker, like the TED Talk videos that you see on YouTube. Obviously, Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and even though we highly regard facts as a means of confirmation bias and assurance of evidence to the contrary, we forget to consider how these orators play a role in history. Now, I really want you to think hard on these examples. Winston Churchill's speech, the Gettysburg Address, Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, JFK speeches, FDR speeches, Gandhi's speeches. Ring any bells yet? What were the outcome of these speeches? What were the outcomes of religious literary works? From the Bible, Quran, Bhagavad Gita, Tao Te Ching. Again, obviously a lot open to interpretation since religion itself is being outdated.
For the love of God!
Nevertheless, oration is not just public speeches. In my opinion, orators are conduits of the stories that have been told to us since the beginning of time. Not just fairy tales or fables, but stories in and of themselves that improve our concentration and drive us to the path to write history by our own voice.
We shall never surrender!
Did they ever say a bad word about Winston Churchill? Churchill! Ugh! With his cigars, with his brandy, and his rotten paintings! Rotten!
Granted, while most of history that we often get familiarized with are on the basis of war, we still get a bit of a thrill whenever we hear inspirational pieces from Winston Churchill. Again, though, to quote Alan Watts, he stated about war in the following: "Do you know of any war that was fought for the right reasons?" In other words,
Would you stop interrupting me while I am interrupting you?
I'm sorry that scene gets me every time, even though World War II is no laughing matter.
Springtime for Hitler and Germany. Watch out, Europe, we're going on tour.
Comedic as may be, can you not right now?
Any Semite?
Anyway, if you think about it, the way of communication has evolved since time immemorial. From papyrus, the Phoenicians, to the printing press, hardcover Charles Dickens, newspapers, the internet, and regrettably, social media. Which, in my opinion, is the holy grail of misinformation, fear media, hackings, and cyberbullying.
Oh, really? Oh!
We can at least consider the fact that oration is at least the pivotal points that expand the definitions and understanding about how history is remembered. Even if we need a major overhaul of updated textbooks for students that don't date back to the 1960s, 70s, or even hell before all that.
Will you shut up?
Hey, the bitter truth is often better than the sweetest of lies.
Blah, blah, blah.
Well, since I'm being accused of hypocrisy here, I'll move on to the next acronym without any further delay.
Art Van Delay. Art Van Delay? He's an obscure writer. Beatnik.
Next on the list we have R, and I've personally picked recollection.
Holy shnikes.
Obviously, when we think of recollection, we think of it in a psychological or neurological standpoint of recalling memories of our past. But I believe it holds another meaning. Recollection of one's past doesn't necessarily have to be evident of the transient or tangible moment of our own lives alone, but possibly the life of another predecessor of the distant past. Google the sleeping prophets or the psychological session described as past life regressions for further details. Again, this is all theoretical. While cases have been made, no conclusive proof has ever been established yet, so take it with a grain of salt, please. The reason I bring this up as an example is because in our lives, ever since the start of our education in schools, if we wanted to learn anything about our history,
We read a book to look back in the moments of the past.
Hell, I can't read.
Well, whoop-de-freak it!
But for those who are more intellectual and adventurous, they take up the action of exploring these further to prove if right or wrong. That's why we have archaeologists. They make these insane discoveries to prove if our past was actually real and not a fabrication developed by mankind to instill fear or uncertainty on who we are as human beings.
Because people forget the most important rule. College is a service industry.
A service industry?
It's in serve us.
Be that as it may though, we know that education in and of itself is not as honest about its endgame intent as it implies. Lately, education has been looked upon as, get this degree so you can go to work, rather than the continuing fascinations of our existence. Instead of, who do you want to be when you grow up? It's more about, which company is the right fit for you. Now before I go off on a tangent here, going completely off topic as I tend to do from time to time, this brings up an interesting point. The real world, or the conformity society, has conditioned us in such a way about our responsibilities as individuals to pay our bills, taxes, contribute to society in ways that are far different from before, that sometimes we forget about whether or not the before actually existed or if it was just dreamt up in our heads. Disillusion, disassociation, any forms of mental blockage convey in itself the feeling of, what if the history books were wrong? Conspiracy theories exist for a reason. They supplant the idea that everything that we have been taught has been a complete fabrication. And yet, all evidence always leads to the contrary. But then someone will say, this evidence is fake evidence brought by the Illuminati to hide the fact that aliens live among us. Do you see where I'm going with this? I know, I'm surrounded by a-holes.
Sometimes I think you've lost whatever friggin' marbles you ever had.
The point is that the way we use the internet today can be used to dive deeper into history as a means of recollecting our own history. Such as sites like 23andMe and Ancestry.com can be used as prime examples here. But as always, as a word of caution, we have to find actual legitimate websites, and those are far in between these days. Unless you're an expert at coding or finding the dark web where possible yet not always accurate secrets can convey the truth in its entirety, it should be considered that not everything on the internet is true, especially Facebook. These quotes should be considered when thinking a bit more harder about the dogmatic yet simply evident understanding of history as a whole. What is history? An echo of the past in the future, a reflex from the future on the past. Victor Hugo. The charm of history and its enigmatic lesson consist in the fact that from age to age, nothing changes and yet everything is completely different. Aldous Huxley. Our history is not our destiny. Alan Cohen. History is the present. That's why every generation writes it anew. But what most people think of as history is its end product, myth. E.L. Doctorow. Which brings me to the final acronym of this video essay, the alphabetic letter Y, which represents yesterday. Yes, I know, some of you are probably thinking about Kung Fu Panda right about now. Now that I have your attention here, I just want to say that the movie quote actually holds some Zen Buddhist Taoist weight to it. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. Am I wrong? You're not wrong, Walter. You're just an asshole. Okay, then.
Let's take a page from the Tao Te Ching and consider its relevance to how we view yesterday, or time, in reference to causality, because I believe causality plays a big role in the idea behind yesterday. This is the closest representation I can find in the Tao Te Ching, for it is not always simple to decipher the hidden message in this book. Great accomplishment seems imperfect, yet it does not outlive its usefulness. Great fullness seems empty, yet it cannot be exhausted. Great straightness seems twisted. Great intelligence seems stupid. Great eloquence seems awkward. Movement overcomes cold. Stillness overcomes heat. Stillness and tranquility set things in order in the universe. You can interpret this however you see fit, or Google it for that matter. But the last section of this verse is something that I think fits with what will be our final discussion. Movement overcomes cold. Stillness overcomes heat. Now I just want to focus on these two quotes. Now, one interpretation could be used in the ways of meditation and how we should be still and focus on our breath. But I think of this in a different light. Movement overcomes cold. The past. Yesterday. Stillness overcomes heat. Present time. Today.
The future isn't written. It can be changed. You know that.
Out of all that we have discussed, this idea about history as a representation of yesterday holds more weight than anything else. We think of history as reading a newspaper or online news article talking about the events that happened yesterday. Whether the stock market, the latest sports games, business, etc., etc. We get egregiously fixated because we are aware of recessions, inflations, and economic status and how they could damage what we possess and make us lose our sanity. We are so caught up on yesterday that we forget about what we have today. All of human history has been a series of war, poverty, revolutions, disease, civil unrest, instability, greed, and corruption. We all too often forget that yesterday doesn't actually exist anymore. But we can't adapt to that ideal or lifestyle because we have obligations and responsibilities to adhere to in a conformist society. We have to make sure that there are no red marks in our records. We have to make sure that our subjective resumes of our past meet the needs and demands of businesses so that we can have a future that will never be.
Slaves with white collars. Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes. Working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need.
We have suffered enough by the chains of causality. The past defines the future as we have come to understand it is BS. There cannot be a fixed point of a permanent future based on events of the past. Regardless of circumstances every individual has faced in life, change is a constant. Every action always leads to an equal or opposite reaction. Be not anxious for tomorrow, what you shall drink, what you shall eat. So if God clothe the lilies of the flowers, shall he not clothe you, O so faithful ones? You are karma, and karma is action, and it is ever changing. The river is ever changing, ever flowing. You are not yesterday. You are not tomorrow. You are here and now.
So what's your point?
What is my point? I'd say I have no idea anymore. But then I would have been messing with all your minds through this triage that we have experienced today, and that would have been a waste. My point is that at this point, we should have learned something from our mistakes. We should have learned from our past in order not to repeat it. And we have done a terrible job trying to live up to that quote. Why? Well, I could say something as terrible as we are creatures of habit, feckless neophytes, all that jabbing BS.
What the hell did you just say?
My apologies, that's the disrespectful, cynical fatalist in me talking. We have made terrible mistakes, but in turn we have made great accomplishments. That's the point of the Tao, the yin and the yang. Where there is success, there is also failure. Where there is gain, there is also loss. History does need to be learned, but it also needs to be unlearned. We cannot agonize our mind and bodies, toiling away at trying to make the world a better place until we know what we want first for ourselves. As selfish as that sounds, the Maslow pyramid exists for a reason. Before we can help others, we must help ourselves. Time continues to move forward, and nothing can stop that. Yesterday doesn't exist anymore because everything is here and now. Yesterday in the book of history, and whether or not it's legitimate or immensely fabricated is anybody's guess. And because of that, it is why true historian scholars are attempting to find evidence of our history's legitimacy and whether or not it should continue to be acknowledged or cast aside. And for that, I commend them for it. I love history. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Lao Tzu, Sun Tzu, Confucius, Gautama the Buddha, the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius, the Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci, Ponce de Leon, Sir Thomas Aquinas, René Descartes, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., JFK, all the events and individuals. They represented moments of aspiration and hope, but they are not here anymore. History is a graveyard of people who accomplished a lot and those who died for nothing. People we've learned of, and people we know little to nothing about. History, trying to give us a glimpse of the idea behind the absolute truth. But here's the thing, there is no such thing as the truth found in any book or on the internet. Why? Because we are that truth, here and now, forever and ever. I know that all that I have shared in this entire essay is probably something that you did not want to hear, but I've already attempted to explain that all that I've shared with you is my theoretical, philosophical interpretation here. And I know that I'm not the only person who has tried to understand the meaning behind history, whether a scholar or a random YouTuber. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I just hope you took some wisdom and some inspiration to do some research of your own, and have a better understanding and so on. And with that, we are done.
Nothing is over until we decide it is! Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no!
I surely hope you enjoyed this video. It took me some good amount of time to put all this together, and I give thanks to those who stuck around this long. If you liked what you saw, please give it a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and all that good jazz. I will leave all my references and sources in the description box below because I know that demonetizing is a thing on YouTube, and I would hate to see all my hard work go to waste. I understand that there will be those who viewed my video who have criticisms on this, so please leave a comment appropriately. Any negative comments that would inhibit negative results like bullying and belittling will be reported. Keep it constructive, respectful, and pleasant. You have your First Amendment rights, and I know you are free to speak your mind despite our current PC cancel culture, but please be nice about it if you can. Other than that, I will try to make this a series and make more videos along the way, so stick around. Thank you all again, and be well everyone. Take care.